welcome to Centre Court Netball fans. All thanks to Victoria Police, Apply Now and TAC Ditch the Distractions. It is a very different Centre Court for you today. Ash and I are both coming to you from our homes. Ash, how are you going in lockdown?
I'm doing well, B. Sad that I can't be with you today, but doing well.
It's just the way the world works at the moment. But even though we're in lockdown here in Victoria, the netball is still going on and there is plenty happening up in Queensland. One thing I wanted to start off with, Ash, is one player who we've both played with, and I thought she was coming to the end of her career, but she's actually dominating more than we have ever seen before and in a bit of a different position. I'm talking about Caitlin Thwaites for the Melbourne Vixens. An absolute standout and a goal attack at the moment.
Oh, she's just been unbelievable. And I love that the question is there now, like, are you coming back to the Diamonds? Like, that's the biggest question. And for me, I'm definitely a player that once you make your retirement, you make your retirement. But I just think she's in too good a form not to ask the question because she's just unreal. And the fact that she's playing a full game at goal attack, I don't care what team she plays for. I never thought that would happen. So I just think she's in the best form of her life. And I don't see her calling it quits anytime soon.
And it actually made me think, I wonder if it's the, no pressure of having the Diamonds there and thinking about the Diamonds and thinking about selection and thinking about what's going to happen there, not having that for her to worry about anymore. I wonder if that's really helped her just come into her own.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing because I think that's something Caitlin always has at the back of her mind. Like, and I rightly so. She's been a part of the Diamonds team for so long and she sat behind Caitlin Bassett for so long. And I think she's always just wanted to be better than her, get that starting position where now, like, you can just tell the weight of the world's off her shoulders and she's just playing unreal netball.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting to see. Things are heating up because we're getting closer and closer to the finals now, which seems weird when the season only just started at the start of August. But what teams are you loving this year so far?
Oh, same as every week. Vixens and Fever, still for me, I'm still thinking they're both going to make the grand final. I am questioning though, and I think it's something we're going to talk about a little later on in the show. Are Vixens resting their players? It's a big question mark for me. I'd be doing it. Liz Watson did her ankle the other day and we saw her back on court. She's your superstar wing attack. Give her the game off. You don't need to win this game. Like, just chill your jets for a little bit.
Chill your jets. Okay, you heard it from Ash first. Now, we do have a very special edition of the agenda and of Centre Court because we have one of our favourites and a player who just today has announced her retirement. So stay with us. We'll be back with the agenda. As promised, a very special agenda for you all today. She has just announced her retirement literally an hour ago, and we managed to get her on Centre Court. Natalie Medhurst, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure, Natalie. Very formal, B.
I know. Do you know what? I'm going to start formal, and then I'm sure it's going to get a whole lot looser by the end.
Great. Love it.
Let's just go through some of your career highlights. So 17-year career, dominating as a goal attack across international and domestic netball. You debuted in 2005. I've done my research. 86 test caps. You've won 3 world championships. You've won a Commonwealth Games gold medal, a total of 235 domestic games. Are you exhausted?
By the sounds of it, yes, I should be.
That made me exhausted.
Yeah, I am, which is obviously probably why I'm retiring. I think the last couple of years, I've always, I guess, questioned whether or not it was going to be my last year. And I think just with everything, and whilst even I think physically, I know I can still play and I still believe I have something to give. I think it was just becoming harder to back up, particularly from a training perspective, to go in. It was probably getting quite draining. I loved competing. I'll always love competing. But, I think all of it going on, my age, I was like, I think that also scared me. It's like, if I keep playing, I'll be 37. I don't want to be one of those. So, I decided it was the right time to officially hang up the dress from all forms.
Now, I want to understand the decision-making process for you because we know that you gave birth to your beautiful little boy Edison not long ago, and then we saw little snippets of you getting back on the court, and I don't know whether you were preparing to come back, but what actually happened between giving birth and then deciding, you know what, no, this is what I do in life, I don't need to go back out there on the court?
Well, I guess when I was first pregnant, I thought, and everything at that point was normal in the world. There was no COVID. So I always thought, I wouldn't have played this season. Then COVID happened. And I thought, there might actually be an opportunity to get to play. And that was conversations I'd had with the coaches before I gave birth. And then with everything and how I was feeling and conversations with them, I was trying to get back to play 3 games, but trying to get an exemption for my partner Samuel, who would have been primary carer of Edison, was a very long process, very stressful. And I guess still during that time I didn't really know, and I was applying for jobs. I got really lucky with getting a job with Commonwealth Games Australia, and then that sort of just helped my decision. I thought if I did play as well next year, it would have been maybe not the right reasons. It might have been so I had a job and something to do, because it's quite daunting going, I'm finishing, but what's next? And then when it became too late to be able to get to Queensland, then I was like, okay, well, this is it. It's going to be official. Let's make the announcement.
When was your actual last game that you played? I was trying to think about that. Who was it against? Do you remember?
Well, it depends on how official you want to go. The last game for...
Ignore the question, Nat.
Pardon?
Ignore the question. We don't know that last game.
Yeah, well, the last game, technically, I guess, from elite level was against the... who was it? Melbourne Vixens in the final. And yeah, let's not remember that. That was terrible. Far out. I had an absolute shocker.
You had broken.
Or we can go, my last game was in New Zealand in December. And that was a lot better. We won. So I'll take that as
and I'm pretty sure you got MVP as well. So
that's a rumour, yes, apparently.
I've got a question for you, Nat. So becoming a mum and retiring after a 17-year amazing career, do you think, like both being massive milestones, do you think that's going to be like harder or easier to transition?
Yeah, good question. I have no idea. I'm jumping in head first, going into a new job, which I start on Monday. Far out. So which is very exciting, and obviously working from home, which will make things a lot easier. I think as well, part of me trying to get back, a big part was obviously my identity, and as all athletes we know, it's tied up in your sport, and that really becomes who you are and what you're known as. And I did feel like I wanted to at least do everything to try and get back, and I guess see that part of as well, just becoming a mum, I hadn't lost that part of me either, in terms of what I had done, and that then needed to drop everything, and I was capable. So in a lot of ways I'm really proud, because I was fit to play. I would have been able to get there had everything fallen into place. But yeah, it's just certainly strange times. But as you know, Brazzy, being a parent, it's amazing. They do nothing and you think they're an absolute genius, and you're like, and I've helped create that. So I'm looking forward to it. Being a parent, is pretty special. I think can ever compare to that. So everything that I've achieved, and even in these last 12 months, what's presented itself.
Yeah. And like, I joke with you all the time that you've got this cult following, and I'm joking like it's true, and every athlete wishes they had what you had. But like the Nat Medhurst legacy, like if you could just like say it on the spot and you want to be known for, what would you think that legacy would be?
Not for having a cult following. That's scary. I don't know. That still sort of surprises me. I feel like I've always been one who's gone under the radar. I'm not someone who's been heavily, I guess probably a key player, marketable, that sort of thing. That's not sort of what I've chased. I think if I was to be remembered, I know I'll always be remembered as being honest, and I like that as well. I think I've always stayed really true to who I am. And I think just being a hard worker, I think that's something I've really prided myself on. And, you know, I think people sit back a lot of the times, and even maybe younger ones who are coming through now, and they think things happen automatically, and to play at the elite level or to represent your country, it takes hard work, and to do it year in, year out, it does. Obviously you need a little bit of luck as well, but you know, I think I've done everything possible to always enable myself to be selected and to keep performing, and I'd say resilient. If I throw in another one, I know you said one word, but resilient. Yeah, I've moved around, you know, I've played 4 clubs, had things thrown at me. So, yeah, I think it's certainly I've needed that throughout my career as well to stay for as long as I have in the game.
Yeah.
And I think now, I agree with you. You're all of those things that you've said, but I mean, to me, you've always been a fighter. You've been a fighter on the court. You step up to the battle. You love the pressure more than any player that I've ever got to play with and play against. But one thing that also stands out for me was just your passion for making sure that players, whether they're the youngest player in the team or the oldest player in the team, always had what they needed to feel supported and to feel like they could be an athlete. Do you want to just touch on, like, where did that passion, I guess, come from, and how hard has it been sometimes to be in that position?
To be honest, well, it first started, I'm getting involved probably in the Players Association. I think I was in Aussies and I got thrown under the bus by the senior players to be the delegate. Thanks, guys. But to be honest, I'm so thankful for that, because it opened my eyes to obviously the sport, what goes on, what people, you know, I think particularly those older players have had to fight for, and you yourself in particular, B, have been amazing, and I think really opened and supported me in being involved and wanting to help support athletes. And I think the other thing as well, I always remember as a kid, you know, Dad always said, if you've got a problem with something, then talk to whoever it is about and get something done. I think as females, we're known to probably talk too much behind the scenes, or not go and want to get things addressed. And I've obviously been through some stuff or been treated in ways which hasn't been great. And for me, I think empathy is one of my biggest traits as well. And I've always wanted to make sure that there hasn't been then another player that's had to go through the same things, or feel like they don't have support, or that there's, you know, certain things missing that would enable us to be better athletes and better people off the court. So, yeah, I've always been happy to go in and fight, and even if it has been at my own detriment, but I hope it's been worthwhile, and that, you know, the sport, as I said, you've played a huge role in that as well, and hopefully I've done a bit in making the sport where it is at the moment.
Oh, I think you've done a huge amount, and I think that's where I've really enjoyed working with you in it too, because I feel like there's only so long that you can put all that effort and energy in until you pass it on to the next person and go, here you go. But I definitely think it's something that you can, I guess, hang your hat on to say that you have changed the sport and you have driven it further into this professional world. In saying that, are you watching the games at the moment? Are you loving seeing what's happening up in the hub in Queensland? I'm sure you probably wish part of you that could get up there and play, but what are you loving about the actual game at the moment?
I have been watching. I've never watched more netball in my life.
Same.
I was someone I didn't like doing the review, or really watched any games when I wasn't playing. I completely switched off, and here I am watching netball 24/7. What's happened? Geez. No, I am enjoying it. It's interesting, obviously very parochial about the 2-point shot.
You dominated the super shot. This is why I don't know why you don't like it. You would have absolutely dominated that zone.
Yeah, it's because it's halfway out. It's that. There's certain, obviously that's a whole different conversation. We need another one of these. But it's obviously, you know, it's scary with some of the injuries that we've seen has actually forced people out from playing for the rest of the season. The games are still messy, and I'm not convinced that on the back of this as well, we could potentially not see the best team in the finals or in the grand final because of that super shot, 2-point shot, whatever you want to call it, because there's teams who are playing netball and absolutely dominating against an opposition, and that opposition then gets lucky with a couple of long shots or halfway shots, and then coming away with wins, which I don't know, it doesn't sit well with me just from an integrity, competitive balance kind of thing. But hey, netball's on, the girls are playing, so yeah, you got to be happy with that.
Love that insight, and I think we need Nat more on the show to get her views on different things. I love it. And
Have we done my high horse, Brazzy?
Nat, I want to ask you a question about like your playing career. In the 17 years, when do you think you were playing your best netball, and for what club?
Oh, it's sort of a hard one. I think 2018 at West Coast Fever was quite good, and I think particularly as well just because we'd been obviously players such as yourself left, and the club had sort of gone through a bit of a rebuilding phase, so that was certainly a year. But probably 2011, and I think everything that happened and what that year was like for me as well, I think that was also when I realised what I was capable of as a player. Sherelle McMahon went down during the season when she snapped her Achilles, and I was sort of the bench player at that level as well, or with the Diamonds. I was, coming on to, an odd quarter here or there, and it was a World Cup year, and I think that made me really look at my game and stand up and, start performing when I needed to, and realising myself that I was actually capable of being in that position and being in that starting position. We were successful with the Queensland Firebirds. We won the premiership, and then to go on and win the World Cup as well in 2011. That was probably some of the best, most consistent netball across an entire year that I played, both domestically and internationally, I'd say.
Yeah. Nat, you're also one of those players that you just would dominate against New Zealand. No matter what your personal form, you always knew how to play against New Zealand. What was it about your game, do you think, that really suited special playing against the Kiwis?
Yeah, I loved playing against New Zealand. I don't want to say it was easy, but for me it was just something, because it's never easy against the Silver Ferns, but in some ways it kind of was like that. I don't know if it was just because of the space that they had, and defenders, they're not the most intelligent bunch, and the Kiwis.
Cut her off.
And because the New Zealanders, they like to go off hunting, and because they play that split zone, for me, and I think I'm, like, if I'm being brutally honest, I don't have any athletic ability. I have a good engine, that's it, but I'm not quick. I've got nothing. I'm not good in the air. And so my biggest asset was my court smarts and being able to, I think, probably be deceptive and use the ball and help open up space. And because of the way in which they played, it was great fun to just be able to suck the defenders and open up space, and I think use that creativity against their style of play. Yeah, and I did. I just loved it, and I looked forward to it. Obviously, those rivalries were massive, which was another part that just added an element to it, and yeah, that I like to rise to those sort of occasions. Yeah, I think they were awesome. And, I loved the girls as well, who I got the opportunity to play against, like a Casey Kapua, Katrina Grant. They made me want to beat them, basically.
B, do you have any more questions? Because I've just got one left that I'd like to ask Nat, but if you have any beforehand.
Okay, I'm going to just go with, I just want you to give us your top 3 highlights as a player. Doesn't have to be, the ones that everyone thinks. I want to know what your top 3 are. I'm sure you've had a lot of reflection time over the last couple of weeks.
I've had no reflection time. No, I would say 2014 Commonwealth Games was awesome. And I think that team as well was just, because of your good self, Bianca Chatfield. such a great experience, and it was so polar opposite to what we had experienced in Delhi as well, and just being in and amongst the other athletes, being able to go out in that village, just obviously winning it. That even was really a strange feeling to beat New Zealand by so much in that gold medal match. It was quite surreal, but that was certainly one of the biggest highlights. Gosh, I would say the 2007 World Cup as well, and particularly that last game. I remember there were so many things about that tournament, and I think to play alongside Natalie and Laura Von Berto, who were my teammates at the Adelaide Thunderbirds, I remember, you know, so vividly Laura telling me that she was going to retire, which completely floored me. And then the way in which we won to beat New Zealand in New Zealand, I'd never understood what that rivalry was like. And to then be there and to do that was just absolutely phenomenal. So, yeah, they're probably two of the biggest things that I remember out of my career.
Love it. And so, Nat, my last question, and just think about it, because you've got two players that you've played alongside. And, you know, this interview could just be cut off midway, like through this question. But if you got to pick an all-star lineup, that was your team, you're the captain of it, you've got 10 players, who would you pick?
Oh, gosh. Wing defence, Ashy. Goal defence.
I don't need to answer the rest now. I actually want to hear it. And I don't have to hear it.
Bianca Chatfield. Bianca, I'll probably throw in Jiva, mentor, back there with you at goalkeeper. I'm sure you'd love that. Back in the old Vixen days. Who else? No, this is what I'm going. I'd go centre. I'd go Laura Langman, and just because I'd want to play with her, she's a freak. So she would certainly be that. I would put wing attack. I'm allowed to go internationally. I can choose anyone.
Your team.
Great. Internationally, who would I put? No, I'm going to stick with Laura. She might be my token centre and token international. Wing attack, I would probably say Maddie Brown. I'd go back. I really enjoyed playing with her at Diamonds. Goal attack, I'm going to put me, and I'm going to put Shaz back, Sherelle McMahon back at goal shooter.
You would have put Sherelle on the bench so she was watching you play rather than...
Nah. And I have my backup defenders. I'd have Casey Kapua. I'd throw Laura Von Berto in for the mid-court. It'd be great fun to play with her again. She was pretty smart. And goal shooter, Irene Van Dyke. Why not?
Why not?
It would be an honour to play in that team with you. I would love it. I'm excited just thinking about it.
Oh, that's so awesome, Nat. It's so good reflecting with you, but it's also just so great to chat to you about what an amazing career that you have had. And I'm sure that it's not going to end here. You're not going to be lost to netball at all. You will be around, and no doubt we'll see you in and around the games in some capacity. But we want to congratulate you on your amazing career. We thank you for joining us on what is going to be, I'm sure, a very hectic day for you, but we really appreciate you fitting us in here at Centre Court. And we look forward to, once COVID is over, actually getting together and celebrating what an amazing career it was for you.
Thank you. I'm going to hold you to that. I'm be keen to go out for a well-earned drink.
We've been saying it since you came to Melbourne. We're like, yep, we're going to do it. And we still haven't done it.
Well, I know. Let's lock that in. But thanks so much, guys, for having me on.
Thanks, Nat, and congratulations.
Well, that was the agenda. Thanks to TAC Ditch the Distractions. It's time now for the Nitty Gritty. Thanks to Lexus of Berwick, who are here for you. Contact the team and visit lexusofberwick.com.au. For the nitty gritty, Ash, this week, what I want to talk about is the rolling subs. We know it was a rule that was introduced at the very start of the season, amongst other rules that we've spoken a lot about. But for me, I really am loving seeing some of the statistics going around with how teams are actually using it. And I want you to have a look at this for me. The Vixens, when we see them, they sit on top of the ladder right now. They almost, I think, can guarantee that they're going to win the minor premiership. And when we look at their rolling subs, now this is as of round 11, and thanks to Ella Sweeting for putting this together. But if we look at them, they are hardly making any changes, especially in that mid-court. We're seeing Kate Eddy, Kate Maloney, and Lizzie Watson staying in their positions pretty much for full games all the time, only occasionally changing. And when we look at West Coast Fever, we know they're the team storming home at the moment. They've had, I think, 5 or 6 wins in a row. And when we look at how they're using their subs in the far right, they are making multiple changes every single game. I want to know your thoughts on this. Which team out of the Vixens and the Fever do you think are doing it best right now?
I think there's pros and cons, I guess, for what Simone's doing. One, I love that she's backing in her 7, and she obviously knows they're fit enough, they're strong enough, that they can get the job done. And what I think is still the positive, I guess, for me is they know now that they can be 15 points down and still get back to have a draw or maybe potentially a win. You know, so they know that they're strong enough to do that. Where Fever are going, okay, I'm making changes to how am I going to change my game? They need to do that. Where it's probably the first time where I actually think the Vixens have a plan B. And so I'm actually still tipping the Vixens just because, one, I hope they stay injury free and that it's not too much on their body. But they're changing up their game. It's the first time I'm really ever seeing a zone from them. And I think that's great. But yeah, I do think I'm still putting that question mark on. I don't want anyone to get injured, but I do think they are looking fit, and I'm backing in Simone. If she's backing in her 7, I'm backing them in as well.
And we don't want to make this all about the Vixens, but we do know the Vixens are also one team who are not really, and Nat Medhurst would be happy with this, they're not really using the super shot at all. Like if they manage to shoot it from there in the last 5 minutes, then great, but they are not actually aiming for it. And on the other side, West Coast Fever, even though Janelle Fowler is their dominant shooter, they are trying to use that super shot zone when they can.
Yeah, and you know, Janelle, she can get those big high balls under the post, or she can also shoot the 2-pointers. So, you know, both teams are capable of doing it. But yeah, it's going to come down to, I guess, really who shows up on the final, because they both are playing completely different game plans, but they're both doing it so well at the same time. And I know we're not talking about the Vixens, but when you've got a Tegan Phillips on the bench, like, that's a pretty good person to have on the bench coming on if you need to sink those 2-point shots.
Yeah, well, I'm loving what I'm seeing from both of those teams. Just before we finish, though, I want to talk about New South Wales Swifts and Sunshine Coast Lightning, because at the moment on the ladder, they're sitting 2nd and 3rd. But it seems to be the last couple of games, we really haven't been seeing the best from them. They seem to be going downhill at the moment. I don't know whether it's the injuries, the fatigue factor, being in a hub, all of that. I'm not exactly sure how it's affecting the Swifts, especially. The Lightning obviously are at home. But do you think they're going to bounce back? Do you think that they're going to remain in that top 4 and be competitive throughout the finals?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Swifts. I think they definitely are. I reckon they're just having a patch at the moment where they know their identity. They've gone a little bit away from it, but then you're seeing players like Laura Moore step up. You now have got the question mark of, are you playing Laura Moore? Are you playing Maddie? You know, they're both amazing players, but for me, I'd want them both on court because they both bring 2 different amazing games. But yeah, I just think at the moment, and this is probably where the Vixens are good, they just need to find their 7 at the moment, find that settler. What position are you going to play every player and work from there? But as much as their game is a little bit shaky, I'm still actually enjoying their game.
And I think what we do have to remember now is that teams are going from playing multiple games a week to now it's getting a bit more settled, where they'll have one game on weekends and they do have that time in between to recover, far more than what they've had for the last few weeks of the season.
Sorry, I'm cutting you off there. Classic Zoom call. Just saying that, like, Swifts are still such a young side, and that's what I love about them. They've never ever used that excuse that they're a young team. Like, they've still got experience, but the difference now, which we might see in the finals, is because we are now seeing fatigued and tired bodies, the experience is really going to show. And that's probably where, you know, a Vixens and why Katie Thwaite is playing so well at the moment, because she's got experience. She knows she doesn't just have to run and run and run to get the ball. She's now using her brain and her smarts. And I think that's really where we're going to start seeing, I guess, the better and experienced players step up.
Oh, absolutely. And just even from a team perspective, the New South Wales Swifts were the premiers last year and haven't had too many changes to their lineup. And the Sunshine Coast Lightning won it the years before that. So both teams do know how to win when it matters. So let's watch this space. That was the Nitty Gritty. Thanks to Lexus of berwick.com.au. Braz, it's now time. I hand it over to you for Brazilliant.
Thank you, Bianca. So this week's Brazilian award goes to something that I saw in one of the games this week, and that goes to Maddie McAuliffe from the Sunshine Coast Lightning. We had Shamira Sterling from the Adelaide Thunderbirds go down, and you know, it was pretty dramatic scene. She rolled her ankle. Her physio ran off on the court to help her off the court. Their wing defence was trying to help. Maddie McAuliffe at the time was on the bench for the Sunshine Coast Lightning, and she ran onto the court to help her get off the court. And you just don't see that in any sport, another team coming on to help another player off. So I just thought that was amazing, great human behaviour. And another, I guess, thing we saw that in another game was the West Coast Fever game when Ingrid Collier went down doing her ACL. Every single player from the Queensland Firebirds, after the final whistle, went over and gave her a hug before they went into their huddle. So I just think that's why I love netball. It's not just being a good teammate for you, but just being a great sports person. So well done to Maddie McAuliffe and the Queensland Firebirds.
Oh, and I love that you highlighted those particular parts, because I think, I don't know, people forget, don't they, that you can be super competitive on the court, you can be, you know, rough and go for every ball, but everyone's human. And I love that our sport and all the athletes care about each other and really, you know, step up in times where you need the most kindness and in those times of serious injuries. And did you have any standout moments, Braz, for you when people from other teams kind of stood up and went and showed you some care and love?
Oh, I think, like, just recently doing my knee, the amount of support that I had from, I guess, players, but just the netball world, like just from people that watch the game to umpires to other coaches to other teams, the amount of support I got doing my knee in another code, I think was just like, it just is another, yeah, made me love netball even more. And just like, I think going back, when you think about how many players actually play our game, there's 80 positions, I guess, in SSN, which is so little. Like, you think about an AFL team, that's 2 teams, and that's our whole competition. And then you think about how many internationals we have, there's probably 20, probably more, who knows. That's 60 Australian spots. So when you think about that, I think, you know, you can't just not pretend that you're all mates, because we share something pretty special. And yeah, that's what I love about netball. We're still this small community, but in the end, we're also a big community as well.
Oh, absolutely. And our thoughts go out to Ingrid Collier. It was really hard to watch, and she's been in such great form. The Fever are in such great form. So we wish her all the best for a speedy recovery. Braz, it's now time for the final say. Here we are for the final say. Victoria Police are recruiting now. Search police careers and apply to be a force for good. I'm going to start us off today, Ash, and my final say, Fever, I know I've spoken a lot about them. I know it's your old team, Ash, but Fever are going to finish second on the ladder by the end of round 14. I said it last week, they're dominating, and to watch them from this space, but now I'm really, truly believing it, and they are going to finish second behind Vixens when it comes to round 14. Do you agree, Braz?
Well, they are playing well, but I'm questioning how much you love this team. And have you been speaking to the Diamonds coach? I think you want to dress me. This is a bit too much talk about Fever, I think.
I have been pumping them up. I mean, I've still got my Vixens heart here that I want them to win the whole thing 100%, but I reckon Fever are certainly going to challenge them. What's your final say this week?
my final say is I've got no idea when they're announcing the Australian squad, but surely it's coming up. But for me, someone I would throw in there as a dark horse would be Tipper Dwan. I know it's her first year, but the way she is playing, I just think she's probably like, probably the next Gretel Tippett, but imagine her and Gretel Tippett once that baby comes. I just think, wow, what a lineup that's going to be. And the fact that she got the highest net points, like in the whole SSN history, I just think this kid, we're only just seeing the start of how good this girl can be.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think we've been waiting for Firebirds to find their form, to find the players that are going to fit into their lineup right. And she certainly has found a way to fit in. And I think the Firebirds, they are storming home as well, and they probably won't be able to do it in time. But isn't it great to see young players again step out there and give them just a whole new dimension to their attack end that they haven't had for a long time?
Yeah, and I've talked up Tipper, but you look at their defence end, like with Jenna and Hinchcliffe, I think they've finally worked out their combination. And, for me, if I was a shooter coming up against them, I'd be a little bit nervous because I think they've really found their feet. And the fact that, we're almost at the end of the year and they do need, I think, 10 points to make the 4. It is looking a bit hard, but they're a team probably to look out for next year.
Couldn't agree with you more. That was the final say. Victoria Police, apply now. Now, Braz, that's the end of what's been a massive episode of Centre Court. I'm going to throw this to you without notice. Who's going to win the premiership?
Oh, hey, come on. I know the grand final, it's going to be against Fever and Vixens. And, it's so tough. But I'm going to go with my old team, Fever. You've got to throw the green in there somewhere. And I know you're going to go Vixens, even though that you love Fever so much at the moment. So I'm going against you.
Well, there's the 3 rounds to go. I think there's a lot of netball still to come, and we will certainly be back with you again next week. But that was Centre Court for another week. Thanks to TAC. When you're on your phone, you are driving blind. Ditch the distractions. And Victoria Police, who are recruiting now. Search police careers and apply to be a force for good. Thanks again, Ash. I'll see you next week.
And great seeing your face, B.